There's a fundamental difference between being genuinely loved and being quietly evaluated. Most men don't realize which one they're experiencing until the consequences hit. Women rarely announce dissatisfaction the moment it begins. Instead, they watch, they adjust, they test the waters. By the time they speak up, the internal decision is usually already made. That's why men often feel blindsided, confused, and powerless afterward. In this video from Hidden Waters, we're going to unpack 6 hard truths about women and modern relationships, insights that explain these moments with blunt clarity. These aren't theories or passing trends. They're behavioral patterns that repeat across time and context. The goal isn't to frighten you, it's to make you sharper. A man who understands this evaluation process doesn't panic when things shift. He notices the signs early, responds appropriately, or chooses to step back before irreparable damage occurs. Pay close attention. Awareness always comes before control. The first truth is that the internal scorecard never switches off. Many men believe attraction is something you earn once and then keep indefinitely. That's a dangerous misconception. Attraction isn't a certificate for being decent. It's an ongoing living assessment, constantly updated. Even when she says she loves you, this isn't a manipulative scheme. For most women, it isn't even conscious. It's just a background process, a quiet measurement of how you show up in life. Everything contributes to it: your energy, your direction, how you handle pressure, the way people respond to you, and the way you respond to setbacks. All of this feeds one unspoken question she asks herself repeatedly: is this man moving forward or is he slipping? When your score is high, you feel it without needing validation. She's warm, present, engaged. She invests emotionally and physically because being with you feels like an upgrade, not because you begged or negotiated. Your presence alone carries weight. But when your score dips, the change is subtle at first. A little less warmth, a touch more critique. Habits she once found endearing now start to irritate her. You haven't magically become a different person. The evaluation has shifted. Men often misinterpret this, assuming she's changed, become unreasonable, or suddenly unhappy. In reality, what changed was the trajectory she perceives: loss of momentum, fading leadership, a dimming spark. It's often gradual, noticed by her before it registers with you. It's essential to grasp this. Attraction isn't stored, it's updated daily. That doesn't mean tiptoeing around or obsessing over every small interaction. Weakness compounds faster than mistakes, and paranoia will sink your score. What it does mean is that your consistent actions, your strength, your drive, either build or erode value over time. By the time dissatisfaction is voiced, the scorecard has already been declining. Complaints aren't the start, they're the final warning that a threshold has been reached. This isn't a judgment, it's simply how the process works. Once understood, you stop arguing with outcomes and start focusing on causes. Words can't convince her. Only consistent action restores value. She didn't change, your score did. The second fact is that by the time she articulates a problem, it's usually been there for a long time. One of the most painful truths for men is realizing they were living in a completely different reality than the woman beside them. From his perspective, everything seemed normal. No major fights, no obvious warnings. He assumed the relationship was solid and safe. Then one day, she says she's unhappy, distant, or done, and he feels blindsided. Here's what's rarely taught. Women communicate dissatisfaction through behavior long before they voice it. Words come last, actions come first. She starts pulling back, just enough that an observant partner would notice something feels off. Her touch changes, her tone shifts, her enthusiasm wanes. She invests less emotionally, physically, and energetically. Men, wired to respond to explicit statements rather than subtle patterns, often dismiss these cues as stress, a bad day, or a passing phase. They continue as if nothing has changed, unaware of the silent evaluation happening alongside them. This is why men are almost always the last to realize a relationship is failing. Not because they're inattentive, but because they're listening for words while the real message is delivered through consistent actions. There's a point most men never see coming: a threshold. Before this point, minor adjustments in your behavior can influence the dynamic. After it, they can't. Respect has eroded, attraction has declined, and once that line is crossed, conversations are no longer opportunities. They're explanations. She finally speaks up, not to negotiate, but to justify a decision she's already made internally. From your side, it feels sudden. From hers, it feels overdue. Understanding this flips the script. It's not about panic or guilt. It's about observation and action. A man who comprehends these patterns notices subtle shifts early. He knows when to respond, when to correct course, and when to step back. Complaints aren't the start, they're the result. Words are never the trigger, they're the reflection of a trajectory already in motion. Once you internalize that, the entire dynamic changes. You stop reacting impulsively and start managing the forces that truly matter: your value, your presence, and your forward motion. These truths aren't comfortable. They're not sugar-coated, but they're necessary. Understanding the silent evaluation process, the subtle behavioral signals, and the internal thresholds of women gives a man clarity and control. You stop being a passive participant in relationships and start navigating them with awareness. Hidden Waters brings this insight not to intimidate, but to equip. The man who observes, adapts, and maintains consistent strength is never blindsided. He's always prepared for the truth behind the words. Men often try to negotiate attraction. They explain, justify, argue logic, and promise change. They scramble to offer effort retroactively, believing that words or last-minute gestures can compensate for months of drift. The truth is, they can't. Once respect has eroded, attraction cannot be bargained for. This isn't cruelty, it's simply psychology. Attraction responds to consistency, not urgency. By the time a complaint or warning is finally voiced, the window to reverse the trajectory is often closing, or may already be closed. The lesson isn't to become hypervigilant or fearful. It's to stop waiting for explicit confirmation before taking patterns seriously. Behavior is the briefing. Words are merely the paperwork filed afterward. Ignore the behavior, and you will always be reacting rather than leading. Another harsh reality is that some women don't leave until their exit strategy is already quietly set in motion. This is one of the hardest truths for men to accept because it clashes with the way loyalty is traditionally defined. For most men, commitment is binary. You're in or you're not. Faithful or unfaithful, present or absent, black or white. But some women operate differently. Not all, not most, but enough that ignoring the pattern can be dangerous. A backup plan rarely looks like overt betrayal. There's no sudden cheating, no dramatic line crossed. On the surface, everything appears innocent. Old friends, co-workers, someone from the gym, a casual check-in from a man she knows. Nothing physical happens, nothing explicit is said, and that's exactly why it's easy to overlook. These connections serve a purpose that's subtle but strategic: insurance. When a woman senses her relationship may not lead to what she hoped, when her internal evaluation has been trending downward, she often doesn't confront the problem directly. Confrontation requires vulnerability. It risks conflict. It risks facing the possibility of being alone without a safety net. So instead, she hedges. She keeps doors ajar. She maintains light emotional access to men who represent potential alternatives, not because she plans to leave immediately, but because she wants a safety cushion if circumstances shift unexpectedly. Her reasoning is simple. As long as nothing physical occurs, she's done nothing wrong. Loyalty, in her view, is preserved because the line she respects hasn't been crossed. To her, these interactions are just conversations, harmless attention, connections without consequence. From your side, it feels off, yet you cannot quite pinpoint it. Phones are guarded more carefully. Certain men are minimized in conversation. Exes linger in the background. When you express concern, the response is predictable. You're insecure, controlling, overreacting. Out of a desire not to seem jealous or mistrustful, you back off. You silence your instincts and convince yourself it's all in your head. The reality is that her sense of security often requires options. This doesn't make her manipulative, it makes her cautious, but it does mean that her loyalty is often conditional on how safe and certain the future with you feels. Most men only discover the existence of a backup plan after the relationship ends. She moves on so quickly it feels impossible. From your perspective, it seems abrupt. From hers, it was prepared. The emotional groundwork was already laid quietly while you believed everything was intact. The solution is not jealousy, it's not control, and monitoring or policing her behavior only signals weakness. The real solution is becoming the man who renders redundancy unnecessary. When your value remains consistently high, your direction is clear, and your presence is undeniably her best option, backup plans lose their relevance, not because you demand loyalty, but because you earn it naturally. Another truth is that many modern relationships are evaluated more like business deals than bonds. A generation ago, relationships were understood as partnerships, imperfect yet structured. Each person contributed differently, and both were expected to sacrifice, compromise, and grow together. The goal wasn't constant pleasure, it was stability, shared purpose, and family. That model has largely eroded, replaced by ambiguity and expectations shaped more by individual gain than mutual growth. Today, what many men face is a transactional framework disguised as romance. The relationship is no longer measured by what two people build together, but by what one person receives. Attraction and investment are filtered through benefits, comforts, experiences, social access, and status. The underlying question driving her attention becomes, what does this man provide for me right now? Social media didn't invent this mindset, but it amplified it. Every feed delivers curated glimpses of luxury, travel, and convenience, normalizing a lifestyle many now expect. The unspoken conclusion is that the right partner should deliver these experiences. This is where men often stumble. He believes they are building a life together. She is quietly evaluating whether the arrangement meets her standards. As long as the benefits flow, the relationship feels affectionate, supportive, and secure. When those benefits slow or stop, the dynamic shifts. Admiration and warmth often rise or fall according to outcomes. When he struggles, she may withdraw. When she invests emotionally, financially, or socially, it's often conditional. This isn't love deteriorating. It's a transaction losing its perceived value. Understanding these patterns doesn't make a man cynical. It makes him perceptive. It allows him to see the unseen signals before words arrive, to notice the trajectory before it becomes irreversible, to act instead of react. Awareness gives him control, not through manipulation, but through consistent presence, decisive action, and unwavering direction. By grasping how attraction, evaluation, and subtle strategy operate beneath the surface, a man can navigate relationships with clarity, confidence, and strength. He becomes resilient to blindsiding shifts, capable of maintaining respect, and prepared to preserve or rebuild value when necessary. The danger is that many men don't realize they're in a transaction until it's over. He believes they're building a partnership, investing together in a shared future. She believes they've agreed to a deal, one measured by what she gains and what he provides. When circumstances change, job loss, financial strain, fading momentum, the deal no longer meets her expectations and she exits. And here's the part most men underestimate. The consequences are real. Life doesn't pause to distinguish between transactional arrangements and genuine connections. When it ends, assets are divided, obligations assigned, and the cost hits hard. Men who've lived through this often describe the same jarring revelation. They weren't building a life together. They were unknowingly funding her exit strategy. This isn't about labeling women as manipulative or cold. It's about cultivating discernment. Transactional thinking often reveals itself early if you're willing to watch closely. Observe what she responds to, who plans, who sacrifices, who adjusts, who benefits. The critical line to remember is simple. If she consumes but never invests, you are not building a partnership. You're funding a one-sided exchange. Protection doesn't come from suspicion or resentment. It comes from clarity. Know what you contribute, know what she contributes, and be honest with yourself about whether the exchange is mutual or lopsided. A man who understands this doesn't fear commitment. He chooses it deliberately, guided by awareness rather than blind hope. Another reality is that what appears as confidence is often fear polished with poise. Many men mistake a woman's self-assuredness for emotional stability. They see decisiveness, assertiveness, even intensity, and assume she knows exactly what she wants. What they rarely see is the pressure lurking just beneath the surface, a tension most women will never admit aloud. From an early age, women are taught subtly but relentlessly that their value is tied to appearance. Youth, beauty, and attention are rewarded long before character or achievement matters. Alongside the reward comes a warning: it doesn't last forever. Social media only magnifies this pressure, turning comparison into a constant, inescapable loop. There is always someone younger, more desirable, more admired, just a swipe away. Every like, every comment, every post becomes a subtle measure. Every year feels like territory lost. Even women who radiate confidence are acutely aware of their relative position, and this anxiety shapes behavior in ways men often misinterpret. Sudden pushes for commitment, pressure for timelines, repeated questions that edge toward ultimatums. Where is this going? How serious are you? From the outside, these can appear controlling. From the inside, they feel like a countdown. As certain age markers approach, the urgency intensifies. The fear isn't only about being alone, it's about losing leverage, losing options, losing the freedom to choose rather than settle out of necessity. This is why some women accelerate relationships faster than natural compatibility supports, cling to security even when attraction wavers, and become critical of hesitation, not because men are wrong, but because delay feels unsafe. Ultimatums are rarely about dominance. Urgency is rarely about love. It's panic in disguise, and panic-driven decisions rarely lead to healthy outcomes. Rushing into commitment to beat an internal clock, choosing security over genuine connection, or locking down a relationship that feels safe instead of right may ease anxiety briefly, but it plants long-term dissatisfaction and resentment. The lesson for men isn't to exploit this fear or dismiss it. It's to recognize it without surrendering to it. Abandoning your standards or pacing to soothe someone else's insecurity doesn't create stability. It creates imbalance. The confident exterior may demand certainty, but the anxious core is asking for reassurance that time isn't running out. Only one of those deserves your response. Finally, boredom kills attraction faster than betrayal, and you never truly leave her evaluation system. Many men assume stability is safety. Bills paid, routines maintained, no chaos, no drama. From a male perspective, it looks like success. From a female emotional perspective, it can feel like flatline. Women are rarely addicted to drama. They crave movement, stimulation, emotional expansion, the sensation that life is unfolding. When a relationship becomes entirely predictable, not peaceful but static, attraction quietly erodes. Stability without growth feels like stagnation. This is why men who do everything right sometimes lose their partners. He's reliable, consistent, responsible, present, but she starts to feel restless. Nitpicking arises, friction appears where none existed, and claims of something missing surface, even when she can't explain what it is. What's missing isn't chaos, it's stimulation, direction, challenge, evolution. If a man stops developing, stops testing limits, stops becoming more than he was when she met him, he doesn't become a bad partner. He becomes invisible, predictable, safe, but unremarkable. The polarity fades, and with it, attraction. Modern culture amplifies this effect. Friends normalize dissatisfaction. Social media rebrands comfort as settling. Constant exposure reinforces the belief that if excitement isn't present, something must be wrong. Many women act on this belief rather than question it. This is what leads to one of the most disorienting experiences for men: the ex who reaches out unexpectedly. Months, sometimes years pass. You've moved on. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, a casual message appears. It feels confusing, perhaps even destabilizing, because the emotional groundwork was never fully absent. The evaluation system never truly switched off. Attraction doesn't disappear overnight, it recalibrates. Understanding these dynamics isn't about fear or cynicism, it's about clarity. By seeing how transactional thinking, underlying fears, and the necessity of stimulation shape behavior, a man can navigate relationships with insight. He can maintain his standards, protect his value, and respond intelligently to the subtle shifts that dictate outcomes. This awareness allows him to act with intention rather than reaction, to recognize when security is demanded and when growth is required, and ultimately, to ensure he is never blindsided by patterns he could have observed all along. Even after the relationship ends, you never truly leave her internal evaluation. A simple message, "Hey, how have you been? Saw something that reminded me of you," is rarely about nostalgia or regret. Most of the time, it isn't about lingering feelings at all. It's a value check. You remain on her mental scorecard. She's checking your trajectory. Did life falter without her? Are you struggling, stagnant, lonely? If so, the message validates her decision to leave. But if your life has improved, your direction is clearer, your presence stronger, the reaction shifts entirely. There's discomfort, curiosity, sometimes a spark of renewed interest, not because she suddenly realizes your worth, but because your growth reactivates attraction. The correct response is restraint, silence, or neutrality. No explanations, no updates, no emotional availability. Don't allow her to use your life as a measuring stick for her past choices. Sometimes the reach out has a different motivation. Her alternative may have failed. The door she closed might be under quiet consideration again. Men with self-respect recognize this moment. You are not a fallback, not a safety net. You are chosen deliberately, or not at all. Growth becomes the antidote to boredom, direction the antidote to being forgotten. A man who keeps moving forward never chases, explains, or reintroduces himself. By now, you've been handed 6 truths most men only learn after damage is done. Not because they're slow, not because they're weak, but because no one explained the rules while they were playing. The internal scorecard that quietly evaluates you. The backup plan hiding in plain sight. Love that slowly turns transactional. Confidence underpinned by the fear of time running out. Boredom that erodes attraction. Exes who continue checking your value long after departure. These aren't random behaviors, they form a system. And once you understand it, you stop taking things personally and start taking responsibility. Knowledge does not make you bitter. Knowledge makes you armored. The man who loses is not weak, manipulative, or careless. He's the one who believes love alone overrides psychology. The man who wins isn't controlling or deceitful. He's clear. He knows who he is, where he's going, and what he will never trade for temporary comfort. He doesn't chase validation. He builds value. He doesn't argue with reality. He adapts to it. Yes, there are women who operate differently. Women who are grounded, secure, and capable of genuine partnership. But you don't find them by hoping. You find them by becoming the kind of man who can recognize the difference and walk away when something feels off. This isn't about rejecting relationships. It's about refusing to disappear inside one. If this forced you to think differently, that's not an accident. That's awareness replacing fantasy, and awareness changes outcomes. Subscribe not for entertainment, but as a commitment to staying sharp. Like this video if you'd rather learn early than pay the price later. Share it with a man who still believes that being good enough guarantees loyalty. And if any of this hit close to home, say it in the comments, not to complain, but to claim clarity. The man who understands the rules doesn't fear the game. He finally plays it on his terms, deliberate, present, and unshakable.